Some families pass down recipes. Mine pass down rules. Don't run on the dock unless you want to meet the lake early. Don't touch the safe unless you plan to handle the wrath. Don't bring city drama to the country house. And above all, don't mess with the ring. The Ellis ring, as my mother says it, the way some people say the Statue of Liberty. It belonged to my grandmother who, in our family mythology, could slice through a lie with one look and make pie crust that would put you on your knees. I'm Noah. I schedule chaos for a living. Project manager in construction sounds like a job about spreadsheets, and it is, but it's also translating weather into deadlines and men's tempers into timelines. I like structural drawings because everyone agrees what a straight line is. Family doesn't. Family insists a zigzag is a ladder if you squint and love hard enough. I met Lauren on a Wednesday that smelled like wet drywall and coffee. Minneapolis had just remembered it. Rains in May. I was walking a punch list at a school renovation off Hennepin, and she was herding a line of third graders toward a bus with the kind of confidence that makes you want to buy stock in whatever she believes in. She had a voice that could land a plane and a smile that made people decide to behave. We collided at a corner of the temporary fence when a gust of wind turned my drawings into a kite. She pinned the set with one hand and the wind with the other. "CSI, construction scene investigation," she said, eyes bright. "You always carry a body's worth of paper?" "I'm very popular at parties," I said, rolling the set back into a tube. "Noah." "Lauren," she said, and we shook hands like we both intended to do that again. The second time I saw her, she had a coffee in each hand and a book tucked under her arm because teachers carry more than most. "For the man who fights wind," she said, offering the cup. It was too sweet the way first copies often are. She knew exactly when to laugh and when to listen. We had a handful of dates colored with a specific optimism of new things. She told me about her kids at school as if they were seasons. I told her about change orders like they were mythical beasts you could predict with the right map. I introduced her to my family at a Sunday dinner where the roast came out of the oven 20 minutes early and my mother still announced that timing had been perfect. Carol collects family relics, the way other people collect first editions. It's not just objects, it's proof that our version of the story is correct. On the mantle at our Minneapolis house, there's my grandfather's pocket knife, a lace kerchief that allegedly came from a great aunt who never married because she had standards, and the ring. The ring lives in a safe because Carol trusts tradition but not burglars. Blake arrived late the way he does, smelling like a bar that thinks it's better than the neighborhood. He's 3.5 years younger than me and got all the family charisma in the gene split. He's been a bartender, a brand ambassador for a local distillery, a freelance DJ, a someday entrepreneur, and my mother's sweetest headache since 10. Women have always stayed too long around his jokes. Men forgive the kind of trouble he gets into because he laughs at himself while they do it. If I'm a straight line, Blake is the curve that makes you feel like you're in a better sketch. He liked Lauren the way people like bonfires. He felt warmer standing close. He leaned into her stories about kids and made a big show of being charmed when she called one of the students a delightful rascal. He called me Big Bro in a way that made the words both a compliment and a tether. Halfway through dessert he stood, grabbed a spoon, and tapped his glass like a sitcom to propose a toast about how there's not a lot of good people left in this town, but somehow my brother found one. People laughed. It's a skill to make a room laugh. It's also a skill to know when the joke is doing another job. I didn't notice the particular shape of the triangle until Christmas. We've been dating a few months by then, the kind of months that make you think it's safe to say "we" without the rest of your mouth protesting. We did the Minnesotan tour, snow, tiny lights, the impossible quiet of a city under powder. We did 2 houses on Christmas Eve, hers and mine, the way couples do when they're still dividing the year. That night, after everyone else fell asleep in the lake house den with the movie unspooling into blue light, Lauren touched my arm like a woman choosing not to lie. "I need to tell you something," she said, and on the scale of sentences that change your pulse, that one is top 5. "It was before we were us," she said, voice steady. I shouldn't have kept it a secret, but the longer I didn't say it, the more it became this impossible thing in my head. She looked at me like a person deciding whether to cut a wire. I knew before she said it, not the details, just the shape. Secrets have a hum. "Blake," I said, and the name tasted like I'd bitten foil. "Before we were us," she repeated, as if repeating could arrange time differently. "I met him at your place, obviously. He got my number from someone at a bar without asking. We went out twice. It was a month. He said all the right things. I realized very quickly it was not who I am. I ended it. When you and I started, I should have said something. I told myself it was irrelevant because it was not love, it was a phase I'm mortified by. Then it got less irrelevant the more I liked you. I'm telling you now because I don't want to be scared of your family's house anymore. The lake house breathed around us. There is a particular sound to winter water. It registers in your ribs. I could see down the corridor to where the safe sits behind a panel that everyone pretends is camouflaged by a painting no one likes. I could hear my brother snoring on the couch like a man who believes walls exist primarily to keep him from falling off the world. Thank you for telling me, I said, and I meant it. My head was doing all the arithmetic. Lauren and me, early days, lines crossing without a moral. Blake, the month-long orbit he makes around anything that glows. The way my mother's eyes had brightened at dinner, in a way that suggested a thought she decided not to say out loud. I also remembered the way Lauren had leaned into me at a tail end of a day and gone quiet, and how I like quiet. I'm sorry, she said, because it is possible to be sorry without being wrong. I'm not excited to picture it, I said, because it is possible to be honest without being cruel. But I don't need it to be something you carry. If there's more I should know, now's the time. There's not, she said, unless you want to count the fact that I'm going to buy your mother a book on how to not make a relic into a hostage. I laughed, and the laugh sounded like mine. We folded the conversation up and put it on a shelf we both could reach. I told myself a thing I still half believe. People can be foolish and honest in the same lifetime. I bought the ring for Lauren in March at a place that has good lighting and salespeople who speak practical romantics. We had talked about marriage in the way a teacher talks about next year's class, half plan, half hope. She likes simple. She has the kind of hands that make simple look like a thesis. I asked a friend to hide behind a snow-dirty planter outside a little restaurant in Northeast with his phone. I asked the sky for a weather window. When I went down on one knee, a guy at a nearby table started clapping before I finished the sentence, because the world is full of people who want to believe in good timing. She said yes, like she'd been waiting to say it for a while. We cried in that efficient way Minnesotans cry when we're too cold to do it theatrically. We ate dinner and didn't taste it and texted too many people. We drove past the river because it felt like a thing you do when your life takes a turn and the city still needs to be there as a witness. I told my parents the next day. My father hugged me in a way that told me he doesn't hug enough. My mother clasped her hands under her chin and said an entire paragraph without words. She pivoted seamlessly into logistics. You have to have the engagement party at the lake house, she said, as if other options were illegally parked. It's where we celebrate big beginnings. Your grandmother would haunt me if we did it anywhere else. It's still a construction site, I said, which is my way of saying, we're adults, we can choose things. It's ready, she said, which is Carol's way of saying, I have decided on your behalf. She started listing menus and linens and who would bring what potato dish, as if we were about to reenact a tradition the way people reenact battlefields. Blake texted me congratulations with a selfie that included a bottle of something I can't afford and a caption that amounted to, I'll be on my best behavior. I didn't answer for an hour because I didn't want to make a lie feel welcome. When I did respond, I kept it strict. Glad you'll be there. Keep it simple. The week before the party, I spent a day doing what I always do before a trip to the lake. Check the sump, cycle the Wi-Fi cameras, flush the pipes enough to make sure winter didn't leave surprises. My parents added smart locks 2 summers ago after raccoons figured out how to open the garage door and my mother decided the entire animal kingdom was conspiring to steal her jam jars. The safe has a smirk of brushed steel behind that unpopular painting and a keypad that looks like a phone from the future that never arrived. I know the code. I know the log lives in an app that pings you when you've chosen to share alerts with a dutiful eldest son. I opened the safe to check batteries on a flashlight and felt the absence like a missing tooth. The ring wasn't there. Not Lauren's ring. The Ellis ring. My grandmother's. It sits in a velvet box the color of old brews and rarely comes out. Births. Graduations. One photo of my mother wearing it on a chain at her throat the day my father's shop hit 25 years and she decided to dress like a woman who has 2 versions of herself in case one gets lost. That ring is a symbol. It is also a thing, and I was staring at a space where the thing should be. I called Carol because there is no universe in which I pretend I didn't notice. I moved it, she said without a beat. I don't want it traipsing around during a party. People get sticky fingers. I put it somewhere better. Where's better than the safe? I asked, because now we were into definitions. Somewhere no one has to open, she said, which told me it wasn't better so much a secret, and I let it go because pushing my mother into a corner is like arguing with a tornado about the precise angle of destruction. Send me the location in case of emergency, I said, and she clicked her tongue and changed the subject. On Friday, we caravanned the kids Lauren teaches, had made her a banner out of construction paper with the word congrats spelled 3 different ways, and we taped it across the back window until the tape gave up. The drive from Minneapolis to Lake Geneva is long enough to feel like a choice and short enough to make bad choices follow you. The air changed when we crossed into Wisconsin, the way it always does, less city, more breath. The house sits back from the road under trees that think the lake owes them rent. The dock is the sort of place where 10-year-olds become swimmers and 70-year-olds become storytellers. Guests started arriving like weather fronts. My aunt with the salad she always claims is from a recipe she invented that everyone knows is from a magazine. My father's friend from the shop who can fix anything except his own marriage. Lauren's coworkers who have perfected the art of the teacher voice that makes even Blake stand up straighter. My mother moved among them like a yacht does a marina. She wore a dress she calls lake formal and a smile you could mistake for hospitality if you hadn't grown up knowing it meant mission. Blake arrived late, of course, with a paper bag from the liquor store and a grin. He hugged Lauren in the kind of hug you give a cousin you see twice a year. He shook my hand like we were men born on different days in the same locker room. He kept his jokes light. That lasted 40 minutes. You can set a watch by the way he escalates. Compliments that are a shade too personal, anecdotes that place him in the center of a story he didn't star in, the casual contempt for other men's jobs. Big bro builds boxes for people to put their money in, he said to one of Lauren's friends as if he'd invented metaphors. I pour drinks for people who already put their money in boxes. Blake, Carol said sharply, then softened it with a laugh. She had a way of scolding him like a woman who wants the room to see she's still in on the joke. Help me in the kitchen. He does his best behavior for 10 minutes when my mother speaks. He carried a tray. He opened a bottle. He caught me looking at the painting above the fireplace, the one that hides the safe. He raised an eyebrow like he knows every thought I've ever had because he has had a few of them first. I felt that older brother uselessness, the kind that started when he was 3 and I realized his muscles and his face would get him out of trouble. I'd be hired to organize. We watched the sun do what it does best at the lake, make the water look like expensive lighting. Someone, probably my aunt, decided it was time for toasts. People found their places without being told. It's a thing families do when there's a script. My father tapped his glass with a fork and the sound hung just right. He cleared his throat. He is not a man of many words. The ones he uses, he sharpens. We're proud of the life you've built, he said to me, and then he looked at Lauren with his eyebrows in the precise configuration of, I am fond of you, and that was the speech. Lauren squeezed my hand under the table. I started to stand, to do the thing where you thank people for driving, thank them for showing up, thank them for the food they will force you to take home when Blake stood too. He didn't have a glass, he had nothing, which is how he does everything. He raised both hands like a man quieting an imaginary arena. I've got one, he said, as if the room is always waiting for his turn. I've got a toast that's not a toast. It's a truth. Not now, my mother said, which in Carol's mouth is less warning than melody. She was smiling so hard, the skin next to her eyes sharpened. Blake reached into the inside pocket of his jacket. It was unnecessary theatrics, and precisely why he does it. He took out a small velvet box, the exact shade of my grandmother's, and every atom in my body recognized it before he opened it. The room changes when a symbol walks in. It's measurable. He walked around the end of the table with his eyes on Lauren, and the lake fist clenched at his back and set one knee on the deck boards. Lauren, he said, voice loud enough to talk over the dock's small groan. Lauren, you've always loved me. We've always known it. This is how we put the story back where it belongs. He opened the box. The ring sat in its cradle like a dare. I was standing by then, but I don't remember the muscles it took to get vertical. Lauren's chair scraped the deck, and her hand flew to her mouth in a motion no one taught her. One of her coworkers said, "Oh my God, in the precise register that means this is not a blessing." My father's face did not move. He has a version of stillness that looks like survival. Somewhere, a loon called from the middle of the lake with that question mark it puts at the end of everything. Carol started crying. She has always been theatrical with her tears, but this was something else. She pressed her fingertips to her lips and let sound leak out, words and weeping braided together. "It's a symbol of family," she said. and her eyes went to me as if I were the thief, not the man watching a robbery in progress. "The ring is for love that survives. It's for the story that started first." The dot camera ticked its little red light, the one my father installed last summer after a neighbor's kid took our canoe for fun and brought it back like a man who learned something about oars. The living room camera blinked on inside, motion detected in a room full of people who had left their coats on chairs. I noticed those dumb little LEDs because my brain grabs details when the scene gets big. It's how I work. It's also how I survive. Blake looked at Lauren and then at me and then at our parents, a circle of witnesses he'd recruited without making the calls. His knee creaked on the board. "Say yes," he said, like the only thing between him and the world he believes in is a woman's mouth forming the right shape. Lauren found her voice from somewhere under a pile of shocks. "No," she said, clean as a blade. She didn't shout. She didn't whisper. She said it like a teacher who just learned there are words that belong to her, not to the class. She stayed standing, chair kicked back a few inches, both palms open, the pose of someone preventing a fire without pretending the spark isn't real. She looked at me, held my eyes a second long enough to put a plank down between us, and then looked back at Blake. "No," she said again. "Absolutely not." The ring glittered in the exact wrong light. The lake threw the sun back at all of us. The dock gave that long, shallow moan that makes you think about weight and water and how many seconds you have if something breaks. Carol took a small step toward Lauren, a motion so quick I might have missed it if I hadn't spent my life catching small things. "You don't know what you're saying," my mother said, hand out, fingers spread, voice moving from opera to siren. "Don't spit on history. Don't spit on blood." Lauren squared her shoulders and put one palm up in the physical language of boundary. "I know exactly what I'm saying," she said, "and I will not be used for anyone's story." I felt everything in me choose a side that wasn't new, but was finally finished. My eyes went to Blake's jacket pocket where the box had been, then to the safe panel inside, then to the door to the hall, then to my phone in my back pocket with the app that tracks access logs, and another that controls the cameras, and a notes app with screenshots I hadn't planned on using as a last resort on a wooden stage overlooking a Wisconsin lake. The rules I grew up with kept rearranging themselves like magnets under a table. Don't run on the dock. Don't touch the safe. Don't bring city drama to the lake. Above all, don't mess with the ring. Blake stood slowly, ring still in his hand, and for the first time since he arrived, his smile slipped completely off. He looked smaller without the grin. Or maybe he looked like his actual size, and we were all adjusting our eyes. "You don't get to say no," he said, and something in his tone made three people step forward at once. My father, me, and a friend from the shop who once pulled a man off a precipice with one hand. Lauren didn't move back. She didn't flinch. She looked through him, not at him. It's a thing I learned from her. It's a thing kids learn to do with bullies by second grade. "I just did," she said. Carol's tears turned hot. "It's a symbol," she insisted again, pointing at the ring like evidence, like a badge, like a weapon. "It's for the family. It's ours. You can't." I opened my mouth, the word wait already forming, because there is a time to pause and then there is a time to roll tape. The lake breathed. The dock settled. The room, which was not a room, held its breath. "Wait," I said, but it wasn't a plea. It was me reaching for the only thing I trust in a room where story is: currency logs, footage, paper. I took my phone out and set it on the table where everyone could see. The lake blew a little air across the deck like it was rooting for whoever had a better argument. "Blake," I said, "put the ring back in the box." He didn't move. He tightened his grip like a man who thinks possession is 9/10 of permission. I opened the safe app. The screen was all timestamps and tidy rows. "This is the access log for the house safe," I said, loud enough to land on every ear. "It doesn't just record when it opens, it records whose code did it." I zoomed in and turned the phone so the deck could read it. 0211 a.m. Unlocked. User. Guest 4. 02118 a.m. Locked. "That could be anybody," my mother snapped. Her tears were drying into righteous heat. "We have guests. It's a party weekend." "Sure," I said, "except the guest code you gave to your bartender's son 6 months ago when you said, 'Don't tell your father, but this will be simpler than handing you keys,' still shows up as Gust 4 because you never learned how to change the label." Carol flinched. It was so small you'd miss it if you didn't grow up timing your feelings to her micro motions. "And here," I added, swiping once, "is the Wi-Fi cam in the living room last night." I tapped play. the screen filled with a grainy view of our mantle and the ugly painting we all pretend to like. Timestamp 0212. The painting tilted, the panel slid, and Blake's jacket entered the frame before the rest of him did. He keyed in a code by rote, the kind of muscle memory you only get with practice. He opened the safe with a little flourish, like he was showing off for an audience. The audience stepped into frame. My mother. Hair in a low chignon she saves for moments she once photographed. She didn't look like a woman sneaking, she looked like a woman staging. She lifted the velvet box like a communion tray, held it up to the lamp, opened it, checked the hinge like the hinge had ever been in doubt, and then put it in Blake's hands. "Practice it," she said in the video, voice clear enough to make the live Carol pale. "After your father's little speech, walk around the table. Don't rush. You get one shot to reset the story." "Reset the story," Lauren repeated under her breath, as if tasting a new language and deciding she hated the flavor. Someone behind me gasped. Someone else said, "Oh, Carol, the way people say, oh, when the person they admire just knocked over the church candles." Blake reached for the phone. I moved it out of his hand without looking. "Not your property," I said. "We're doing chain of custody, remember?" He smiled on instinct and found no purchase. "Come on, man," he said, but the man didn't land anywhere. "You set up manicams now?" "It's a lake house," I said. "We catch raccoons and teenagers, and apparently high drama." I swiped to the next clip. Doc cam, morning light, empty deck, dress rehearsal. My mother stood in the exact spot where she was standing now and explained to my brother where to plant his knee so the lake would glitter behind Lauren's head. "You'll say she's always loved me," she coached, like a director who doesn't trust actors. "And then then you'll hold the ring up so everyone sees it's the Ellis ring, and no one can argue with that." The deck made a sound. It took me a second to realize it wasn't the wood, it was a group of human beings collectively changing how they saw a woman they'd known half their lives. My father didn't look at my mother. He looked at me, then at Lauren, then at Blake. There were 100 sentences in his face. He chose none of them. He only said, "Enough." "I'm not finished," I said, and my voice was steady in a way that made my hands feel like they belonged to something larger than me. "Because if you're going to rewrite a family story, you should do it with every page on the table." I slid a folded slip of paper out of my wallet. The paper had the soft edges of something handled too much. "This fell out of your glove compartment when I borrowed your jumper cables at Easter," I said to Blake. "I put it back. I took a photo first." It was a pawn shop receipt from Milwaukee. 3 months ago. Description: vintage diamond ring, yellow gold. Inscription: Ellis, 1948. Status: rejected, insufficient provenance, hold pending police notification. A couple of my cousins swore under their breath like men who just realized the punchline had a rap sheet. Blake licked his lips. It was a tell he'd had since kindergarten. "That's not—" "It is," I said. "Same inscription as Grandma's. Same ring you're now using as a prop." My mother's face went through 3 phases. Denial, defiance, calculation. She landed on defiance. "I was going to put it back," she said. "We were always going to put it back. No harm done. It was only to help people see what's true." "What's true," Lauren said, and the words had metal in them, "is I love your son, the one I'm engaged to, the one who didn't treat me like a performance. What's also true is that ring isn't a symbol, it's a cudgel." My father stepped toward my mother with his palm out. "Carol," he said softly, and I watched 28 years of marriage try to find a foothold in a moment that didn't like footholds. "This is theft, planning, coercion. It is not tradition. It is not love." "Don't you dare," she said. And in that second, she wasn't my mother. She was a girl from Racine defending a fantasy she'd been building since she discovered boys could be applied like plaster over the cracks in a house. "Don't you dare call me a thief in my mother's house." "Your mother's house is gone," my father said. "This is ours. And right now, it doesn't feel like mine at all." Blake broke, not into tears, into anger, the brittle kind. "She always loved me," he insisted, knuckles whitening around the ring box. "She said—" I said no, Lauren cut in, and I'm going to say it a 3rd time, because that seems to be the magic number, no. He flinched at the clean edge of her voice. Carol flinched at the power of it, and then, like some terrible reflex, my mother closed the distance and shoved Lauren in the shoulder. It wasn't a hard push. It wasn't a movie shove. It was that little mean push women use when they want to move another woman off a line. But Lauren rocked back a step in heels on old boards, and every man in my family found their feet. "Enough," my father said again, but this time it was a command, the kind he uses in the shop when a tool slips toward flesh. He pulled his phone out and dialed without looking. "I'm calling the sheriff," he said. Carol's mouth fell open in theater. "You will not bring police into this house," she said, which was my childhood in one sentence. "You brought theft," he said. "You brought a scam. You brought hands." "It's family," she said. "It's a crime," he said. Blake finally handed me the ring box. No bravado, no speech. He just gave it to me like he'd been holding something hot and couldn't pretend it didn't burn. Lauren put her palm out. "No," she said, gentler now, to me. "Noah, will you put it back in the safe?" She glanced at my mother. "Where it belongs." "Yeah," I said, and my voice went wobbly for the first time. I turned and walked into the living room, past the painting we all suddenly agreed to hate, slid the panel, typed my code. The safe clicked open like a sigh. I put the ring in the velvet bruise box and closed the lid on a century. I changed the code and the guest codes and the name of every user who had ever been called Gust, anything. I renamed them Carol, Frank, Noah, no Blake. It was petty and practical. It felt like oxygen. When I came back outside, a sheriff's cruiser was rolling down the drive like a slow truth. The deputy stepped out with that careful posture rural officers get when they've been to too many family calls and learned how to separate people without making them enemies for life. He was younger than me by a few years, eyes steady. He listened to my father's version, my mother's, mine, Lauren's, and what passed for Blake's. He watched the footage on my phone without commentary. He looked at the pawn receipt, made a copy on his dash printer, and handed me the original. He took photos of the box and the safe and the dock scuffs where the moment had shoved us around. "This is more than a family disagreement," he said finally, writing a case number on a small card and handing it to me like a passport. "We'll file an incident report for attempted theft, presentation of stolen property, and simple battery. I'm not arresting anyone today, but we're memorializing what happened. You," he said to my mother, with respect that didn't bend, "do not touch that ring without your husband present. You," he said to Blake, "are not to access this property for 72 hours while these folks decide who's on the invitation list going forward." He turned back to me. "If anyone so much as breathes on a boundary, you call us." He left the way good cops leave without making himself the main character. The cruiser turned at the end of the drive and vanished behind the maples. The party didn't end. It dissolved. People carried dishes inside in small, purposeful movements that looked like respect. My father followed me into the kitchen where the island was suddenly a morgue for our day. He put both hands on the oak and lowered his head, the posture of a man who knows what a beam can bear because he's seen it fail. "I'm sorry," he said, "not as a bumper sticker, not as a performance, just a sentence a man says when he realizes he's been part of a machine he didn't know he was powering. I should have seen where she was going. I should have stopped it before it touched you." "It's not on you," I said, because it was the kind thing to say and partly true. "But thank you." He nodded without lifting his head. "I'm changing the door codes," he said. "I'm taking Blake off the deed to the fishing boat. I'm going to ask your mother to leave the lake house for a while." "Dad," I said, because the boy in me is still alive even when the man is doing paperwork. He looked up, eyes red in the way men's eyes get when they stop pretending they're immune to their own lives. "It's my job to make sure this place stops hurting the people it was supposed to shelter." We didn't sleep at the lake house that night. We packed overnight bags and left just after sunset when the water makes a black mirror and demands you decide what you want to see looking back. My father hugged Lauren in the driveway and said, "I will fix what I can. I will stop what I can't." Lauren nodded. "She has a radar for sincerity," it pinged. We went back to Minneapolis and did the small, boring things you do when a story tries to swallow you whole. We ate toast for dinner. We sat on the couch without touching for 10 minutes and then touched because we needed to know our bodies still recognized each other. We slept like people who had just walked out of a room where something invisible had been burning. The next morning, my phone buzzed with something I didn't expect, a shared iCloud link from my father. "Found this on the lake house iPad," the text read. "Didn't know I could be betrayed by notes." I clicked. It was a document titled Ring Plan, authored by Carol's iPad with bullet points that read like stage directions. "Move ring to coat closet day before use. Guest 4 code if Frank's sleeping. Rehearse on dock 10 a.m. Record in case he denies. Say, 'She always loved me.' Make it sound inevitable. Cry if Noah escalates. N.A.I. Dean Clan. Authored by Escalates. Book. If press asks family, say symbol." It was both absurd and perfect. She had outlined the heist in the same app she uses to copy recipes. Evidence isn't always high-tech. Sometimes it's the grocery list with the wrong milk. I screenshotted it and then closed the loop in my head. I didn't know it was open. There's rage that's just fuel for burning your own house down, and there's rage that turns into a blueprint for a different address. We went no contact with my mother and my brother that day. No dramatic texts, no speeches. I sent 2 sentences. We will not be in contact until we decide it's safe and respectful to do so. Do not call or show up. My father sent one. I agree with them. Then he called me and apologized for the intergenerational habit of letting charm write checks that other people's decency has to cash. Blake sent me one message 3 nights later. You really gonna freeze your own blood out? I typed and erased 6 replies and then settled on the only one that didn't make me complicit in my own undoing. Actions have temperatures. This is ours. The sheriff emailed me the report number and asked if I wanted to pursue charges. I said I wanted the report to exist, the way survey stakes exist when someone pretends the property line is imaginary. He said he understood. He said he'd suggest a civil standby if we needed to retrieve any property from the lake house. I said the only thing I wanted from that house was the right to decide when to walk in. We moved the wedding, not the date. We pushed that back 2 months so the smoke could clear, but the place. No lake, no relics, no stage where someone else's myth could sneak onto ours. We chose a small botanical garden in Minneapolis where the only thing older than us was a tree. We kept the guest list short. We told the photographer no ring shots with heirlooms. We told the DJ no family favorite playlist. We asked a friend to officiate with permission to throw out his notes if the moment told him to. My father sat in the front row with a face like a man who had laid down a weight he didn't know he was carrying. There was an empty chair next to him with a white program on the seat. No one said whose it was for. Everyone knew. During the vows, I didn't promise to keep traditions. I promised to keep us. I promised to tell the truth when a lie would be easier. I promised to put the ring in a safe that lives on our fingers, not behind some painting I can't stand. When it was Lauren's turn, she said the words, "I choose you," with the tone of a woman who had been offered a counterfeit and learned the worth of the real thing by holding both. We laughed and cried like practical people do when they realize practicality can be holy. After the ceremony, my father found us under a maple. He handed me an envelope. "House matters," he said, "dry." Inside was a printout from the smart lock service. Reset all guest codes, new master user list, Blake removed from property access, push notifications rerouted to me and my father only. At the bottom he'd scrawled, in his blocky mechanic's hand, "This house is yours when you want it, not when someone else does." We went to dinner with friends. We ate cake that tasted like butter and relief. We danced without trying to prove anything to anyone. Nobody made a toast that exploded. When we got home, Lauren took off her shoes and stood in the kitchen in that perfect, exhausted, newlywed way and said, "Your mother will tell herself 100 versions of why she did what she did. None of them will be the truth. And that's not our homework." I wrote that down on a sticky note and put it on the inside of our pantry where no one but us will ever see it. I am a project manager. I like documentation. This is the one document that matters. We don't do other people's assignments anymore. Months later, on a Saturday morning, I got a call from my father. He was at the lake house alone. "I changed the mantle," he said, "took down the painting." I pictured the empty rectangle of wall, the nail holes like freckles. "What'd you put up?" I asked. He laughed a little. "Nothing yet," he said. "Sometimes you don't fill the space right away. You let the wall be a wall." We're good, not because we won, because we stopped playing a game that only works if you agree to the rules, and we didn't. I still believe in family. I just don't believe in worshiping objects that make liars of people. The ring lives in a safe again. It no longer lives in our decisions. So, yeah, some families pass down recipes. Mine passed down rules. I kept the ones that keep people from falling off docks. I threw away the ones that tell you an heirloom outranks a human being. Would you keep family relics if they're used to manipulate people, or would you lock them away or let them go entirely? Tell me where you draw that line. If this story hit a nerve, drop your thoughts in the comments. Tap like so more people find it, and subscribe because the next ones, they only get wilder.